Hello, everybody, and welcome to another one of these mock interview sessions. We have a great turnout today, and I don't think that any of you will be disappointed. We're here with Min Tang, our brave interviewee, and Alyssa Clark. Alyssa has a ton of experience in this space. We're going to learn more about that in a second, but Alyssa will be our interviewer today. So we're going to get the behind the scenes. We're going to witness this interview happen in real time, and we're going to get all of the insights along the way. So it'll be pretty informal. No big pressure on Min, but Min will try her best to answer these questions. And also some exciting news. The role that Min will be interviewing for today is actually an open role. So there are a couple of open roles at Alyssa's company. So if you wanted to take a look at that now and just have that open in another window, I'm going to share a call to action that has that link. And this is like a remote learning experience design role, on-site option, but just wanted to put that out there in case you wanted to quickly check out the job description, because this is the role we're applying for. So before we dive into the interview, Alyssa, can you tell us a bit about your journey in the L&D space?
Totally. Thank you so much, Devlin, for talking about the role on my team, and I'm so excited to be here. What's up, everybody? My name's Alyssa Clark. I am a 10-year now, I can't believe I'm saying that, vet in this industry. I've worked at 13 companies in those 10 years, and I have climbed the ladder, my friends. I started as an intern building e-learning for Bridgepoint Education, which is now Zovio, and worked my way through healthcare, retail, now into tech, and have done everything from LMS implementation to content design to program management, and really just seen this industry from a bunch of different perspectives. And the one thing that I've done quite a bit in my career is interview to get those different positions. And so it's really helped me, sitting on both sides, sort of form my approach as a leader and how I like to attract people to my brand and to my company's brand. And so I'm super stoked to be here, and I'm excited to connect with anyone on LinkedIn after this and chat with Min. I'm really excited to have the conversation.
Wonderful. And yeah, so you started as an intern building e-learning, and now you're the director of learning strategy and design at ServiceNow. So
Yes, sir.
yeah, I've held all the roles in between at all of these different companies, these different industries. So great industry perspective you have here. And yeah, I've learned a lot and been inspired just talking to you in prep for this session. So I'm very excited for,
That's
for this
super
to come
kind.
together.
Thank you.
And then Min, you're coming from the higher ed space and you're looking to transition into corporate instructional design. So you volunteered to be brave today and just be kind of a great example of what a successful interview looks like. So I think we can dive into it. And it'll be pretty informal. I know you've prepared some questions for us, or for Min, I should say. So why don't we start with one of those questions and we'll take it from there.
Totally. Well, Min, it's so nice to meet you in this setting. I'm really excited and grateful that you took the time, and thank you for wanting to hang out with me for a little bit. I'm really curious to hear about your passion and interest in this industry. Why are you in this industry, and why did you apply for this role?
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very excited to be here. So I've been a curriculum developer for the past 10 years in corporate L&D and education. I'm very passionate about creating data-driven and aesthetically appealing learning solutions in different formats, like instructor-led e-learning and also blended learning solutions. And I think that my experience in different fields allows me to quickly dive into a complex problem and try to create compelling and innovative solutions to meet the business needs. And for applying for this role, I actually watched a news report on CNBC about how your CEO, Bill McDermott, is making hybrid work possible via the indoor mapping tool service now provided, and how ServiceNow is helping employees stay productive working from anywhere. And you might have experience about that. So you could share with us about the products and the platform. It's really amazing. But for my reasons of applying for this role, so there are 4 reasons, and I would love to dive into the details if you would like to know more about that. The first, for most, is that your company has always been known to put a strong focus on innovation. And I would love to be a part of an organization continuously striving to maintain its position as a leader in the market. And the second, I think the position would be a great fit for me. And a collaborative team environment is an excellent place for me to apply my skills and develop myself professionally. And in fact, one of the top values that your company has is win as a team. I think this is really, really important. And third is that I think the position matches my experience, and also it allows me to take on greater responsibilities. And last but not least, I think based on the stories shared by your employees on Life and Now blog and also ServiceNow YouTube channel, and I believe that working at ServiceNow would be a very happy and impactful and purposeful experience. And that's why.
Wow, thank you. So much depth there. I feel like we could have separate coffee chats on so many points that you just brought up.
Sure.
But I'm going to sort of focus on one point in particular that you mentioned, which is on innovation. And particularly in this role, what I'm looking for in my team right now is really someone who that's not just a buzzword or a tagline, that's something you're really connected to and really committed to. And so I'd like to understand a little bit about failure and your experience with failure. Could you tell me a little bit about a time that you failed, Min?
Yeah.
What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I would say that as a person coming from academia, we fail many times and we come back up, and that's the norm, and that's actually our life. I would say that 10 years ago, I worked with a project manager who was very knowledgeable, and they always deliver high quality products ahead of time and had a reputation of being a tough cookie. And I was very nervous, but I wanted to try my best and impress them. So my task was to make a deliverable, and basically is a manuscript by a certain date and time. And I plan to make a prototype first and then ask my project manager for some input. But I underestimate the time needed for the prototype. And so I was afraid that my project manager would be disappointed because of the knowledge gap that I had. So I did not communicate with them about my struggles and difficulties. So the consequences are I did not complete the deliverable before the due time, and my project manager was very disappointed. But the lessons that I learned are basically 2 things. First, I think done is better than perfect. And from then on, no matter what projects I did, small or big, I always reminded myself of turning in the first draft, of which its purpose is just to exist. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it won't be. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I try to build a buffer for unexpected events and give myself some wiggle room when those events come up, as they always do. For example, if I need to go to a place which takes me about 15 minutes, I would try to plan maybe half an hour, even 45 minutes, sometimes an hour ahead, just to take the space and breathe and expect something that unexpected.
You're making
me. Oh, go ahead, Devlin. Do you want to?
No, I just think we should take a pause and to kind of talk about these first couple of questions and responses.
Yeah. Boy, there's so much really wonderful effort, Min, in your responses. And there's a couple of things that I really want to point out from my perspective that would make Min really memorable to me. Is one, her recitation of who she is from an identity perspective. I think owning that you're an academic is such an important concept, because to me, academics are in that field. It's hard, it's gritty. Anyone who's worked in that space knows the politic management, the grind, the sometimes thankless work. And for me, that you identify as that, and that's a part of your tenets of who you are. For me, it's like that person has tenacity, that person has curiosity. And so for me, I really loved that. And I want to invite more academics to own that part of ourselves. And second to that is having a home in tech specifically. I love how Min made the relation between being an academic and that curiosity and failure and a comfortability with failure. And in the tech space, from an attitude perspective, that's what I'm looking for when I ask that question, is someone who's humble enough to say, yes, I failed, probably more than I'm even going to tell you about in this answer. And not only am I comfortable with that, but like, hey, I'm human and I would rather fail and get progress than focus on perfection, which is where I love that the chat and Min sort of took that answer second. There's so much design that I've coached about stop focusing on perfection and focus on good and take care of the learner. Don't take care of your ego or your perfectionism,
Nice.
right? And so just those are some of my takeaways already from just the first two questions. I would remember that about Min.
Nice. Yeah. Great perspective. Loved seeing that. Seemed like such a good response about a time you failed. It's like very specific time. And then we don't just stop at here's the failure, but also the lessons learned. Yeah. Tied that together really nicely. And then what stood out even in the first question was just like, clearly Min has done her research on the company or the role, and it's like citing specific articles and company's values. So I think, you know, that's common interview advice, but it was just nice seeing how Min kind of applied that here. It was really cool. And yeah, loving the chat too. A lot of like Min for the win, and and Min should already be hired, and just comments like this. It's very supportive. So thank you, chat.
Totally.
Okay, great. So should we continue?
I think so.
All right.
So, Min, listening to your response on innovation, I want to welcome you that you would be amongst great company here, because myself have failed multiple times. My team I encourage to fail on a daily basis. And so you would be in great company here. So thank you for also being willing and honest to share that experience with me. I know it can be uncomfortable in this setting. So thank you for doing that. And you did it eloquently, by the way. Switching gears a little bit, I'm really curious now in terms of your eye, what motivates you, and really thinking about, in your experience, what's one of the best learning experiences that you've encountered? You could have built it, or it could just be in the industry. It doesn't have to be your current industry either. You could just be a spectator and have seen it somewhere. But what did you love about it? And what elements really stuck with you to have that be the thing you answer this question with?
Yeah, thank you. Another fantastic question. And I love this one so much because it's about sharing other people's awesome project. So I would say that the best learning experience I've encountered is the XAPI Challenges app by Devlin Pack. And so Devlin didn't pay me to talk about his app. Okay, so just flag that out first. Yeah, I really like that app sincerely, because it provides like practice opportunities for people learning how to collect specific user data from their Articulate Storyline e-learning offerings. And more specifically, I love about these learning experience for 3 reasons, and I would be very happy to elaborate on each reason, and if you are interested in more the details. So first of all, I think this learning experience really combines different technologies and techniques such as automated email and web-based app, and also leaderboard functionality, which is really cool. And second, it used XAPI data generated by the app participants to improve the XAPI tutorials that Devlin created previously. I think this is very clever. And third, it promotes the need for JavaScript and XAPI and also data-driven learning solution. And I'm a firm believer that the data-driven learning solution is the now and the future. So the XAPI Challenge app really inspired me to design innovative learning solutions and apply XAPI in authoring tools. And on a very broad level, I would say that this learning experience encouraged e-learning developers to incorporate new technologies into their products. And I hope that we'll be able to apply some of the other new technologies, such as machine learning, to improve our learning solutions. I know that ServiceNow have very many innovations, including intelligent chatbot and also machine learning and a lot of these technologies. And I'm really, really curious about how ServiceNow is applying these new technologies in the L&D's products.
Fascinating.
All right. So first, yeah, what a question. You want to tell us a little bit about that question? So you're not telling us, yeah, walk us through this specific project you created, but you're asking us about our favorite learning experience we've encountered.
Yeah, this one for me is really about point of view, Devlin, and really thinking about what's the current existing thought on my team? What is the creativity landscape? What are my current team members' points of view? And I'm really looking for someone to be diverse in thought and add to that existing team of already dynamic personalities. And so I'm really trying to understand what's your favorite ride at Disneyland, right? So like really understanding what sticks out to you specifically. And it helps to shed light for me on adult learning theories that you're attuned to. It shows me what maybe your inspiration is from a design perspective, what kind of technology you're comfortable with and that you would use to execute in a more organic way rather than drilling on over technical tool questions or JavaScript aptitude. For me, it's like when you get in a fight with your partner, right? It's never really about like that you left the jar off the peanut butter. It's about like, hey, you're not paying attention to the details. So for me, it's about point of view and how does Min see learning and experience for me, more importantly? Is she thinking about how the learner feels? Is she thinking about where the learner is? Is she thinking about how yummy or craveable the aesthetic experience is? All of those things are what I'm looking for in terms of how she answers that question. But also I want it to be real and show that she's attuned to the space and how modern and contemporary she is with what she's referencing.
Nice.
She's talking about Addie or Sam or library. Maybe that's a bit 5-7 years ago, right? Doesn't mean it's not a good concept, but might just show me that maybe there's a little bit more modernity that could be brought to the answer.
Yeah.
So that's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that is quite the insightful question. And seems like you can get a lot out of that single response. Like all the things you're saying you're looking for, I could see what Min's response is, like revealing about what she's passionate about, what technology she's interested in. So yeah, really good question.
Thanks.
Do you have any comments about Min's response?
Yeah, I do. I think something that Min and I that I really appreciate is being both academics. I think we both could go into a lot of depth about these different topics. And for those of you who have interviewed before, and especially when you're passionate about something, brevity is not our friend. We can tend to be very long-winded because we're excited about what we're talking about. And I've struggled with that as a human myself in being in Min's seat. So what I really appreciate about Min's answers is she sort of gives me her thesis statement, and then she gives me the opportunity to double click into more detail. If I want to say, oh yeah, that point you mentioned you could go deeper, let's go deeper on that. But as we all know, in a 30-minute interview, when you're trying to make a good first impression, that thesis statement is so critical. And then leave space for that double click. Hey, I'd love to tell you more about this in an email, or invite, a follow-up coffee chat after to keep nerding out together as academics, right? So I really appreciate the framing that Min's having in answering my questions succinctly, but then giving me space to double click and show her expertise if I'm interested or if time permits. I think that really behooves a 30-minute conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. And people in the chat are picking up on that as well about, yeah, Min's responses feel so like natural, but also very like structured. So, and I know we have some good questions coming up too. We will try to have time at the end for Q&A, whether you have questions for Min about how she's responding to these or for Alyssa. But I also, Joanna mentioned that she loves these questions. It's comforting to know that there are such genuine hiring managers out there. And maybe this would be a good time to talk a bit more about your like philosophy on this interview, because that's something where the first 5 minutes I was talking to you, I'm like, oh, this session is going to be so good. People need to hear this. People need to see your approach to this.
Yeah, thanks, Evelyn. You guys, it's hard out there, right? Getting a job, especially in this space, coming from higher ed, it's hard out there. And I think one thing that I lead from a design perspective is human-centered design. And I've always wondered why the interview process is not human-centered and why we don't treat each other like two human beings trying to date and understand if this is a connection and if there's chemistry and if this is a mutual fit. And I think for me, when I go into these conversations, and anyone who's worked for me can probably attest to this or been through an interview with me, it's very mutual, right? If you're not feeling it back, I want to know that, right? Like I want to really understand if this is a fit or not, because it's not going to behoove me when I have the attrition later, when you choose to leave. It's not going to behoove you if you come in and you're like, Alyssa Clark is freaking nuts. I don't want to work for this mad scientist. Like that's not going to prove longevity. And I really believe that when we're choosing to work together, we're attaching brands and we're doing that handshake. And for me, I've been unhappy when I've made choices, compromising that authenticity, feeling like I had to cover, feeling like I had to have a perfect answer instead of a raw answer. And for me, I really want to create an environment where quickly, in 30 minutes sometimes, in a first impression, you feel safe enough to really show me as much as you're comfortable with your authentic self so I can understand how are you going to fit with my other team members? How are we going to fit? What do you need? How am I going to help you get better in your career? How do you add to diversity of thought in my existing team? Those are all things that I'm trying to assess in 30 minutes. So I think being humans, building that respect, earning that trust from the first interaction, that's part of my job as a hiring manager, is to earn your trust and create an environment where you can show me and we can be adults and have an honest conversation about, is this a fit? If it's not, we'll have that tough conversation too. If I think it is, I'm usually stoked and like, yes, let's keep going, right? So I think for me, it's really about being humans first, encouraging folks to really own this process. Like you are choosing to attach your brand to a company, to a hiring manager, to a team. And I know desperate times call for desperate measures. And if you're at different spectrums in your career, I've been there where I just had to take the job because I needed the job. I get it. But if you're in a place where you can focus more on quality, I would encourage you to, because I do think longevity will serve you well. But it takes some practice, right? And confidence to really be vulnerable and trust someone that quickly to really be your authentic self. So I know it's a little rambly, Devlin, I'm sorry, but just so important to me about authenticity. I just think that's a huge part of my brand. And I just think we need more of that in corporate America. We need people who are uncovered, authentic selves, and bringing that passion and that curiosity to this place to just keep it, growing and getting better.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries about being rambly. I think this is what we want to hear. And so many people in the chat, so many of us can resonate with that, like that human to human connection. Yeah, you're not here to like quiz people and make sure that they're like answering the questions perfectly.
Right.
You're looking for a connection, you're looking for passion. Yeah.
So, point of view, thinking, interest, passion, resilience, comfortability with failure, self-confidence, learning agility, right? Those are all things and attitude that I would hire for time and time again over you're the best, fastest JavaScript coder out there, or that you can build the fastest e-learning module. That's great. But I don't think that that's what I'm looking for in a 30-minute conversation. I want to know who you are.
Wonderful. Okay, good. And I see some good questions coming in too. I think Taylor is marking them for later when we get to the Q&A, so that will be good. And I see some people saying they don't care what the job is, they want to work for you.
That's a compliment.
So thank you for sharing this perspective. Very helpful.
Totally.
I think we're good to dive back into the interview.
Cool. This is my favorite question.
Okay.
Coming at you. Min, my friend, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to know what is your most proud accomplishment this far in your career? And I will cushion it by saying it doesn't have to be corporate learning related. Whatever comes up for you.
Thank you. That's probably my favorite question too. So I would say my greatest accomplishment happened in my previous role as a curriculum developer lead for a project that becomes one of the most successful projects in our organization in higher ed. So I saw that the enrollment rate for one of our oldest curricula was dropping very quickly that year. So I also heard that learners complained about the content and also the design of the curriculum. So I made a proposal and discussed with my directors about redesigning the curriculum. So after getting their full support, I took the initiative to conduct a thorough curriculum analysis and also collaborated with two subject matter experts and their cross-functional teams of people from different disciplines. And so to design the curriculum, I basically did 4 things. The first one is that I replaced those like information dumping content with interactive like case-based activities. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I use multimedia aids to explain some very complex content. And third, I also offer learners opportunities to create project-based content. Basically, they create content for themselves and form peer support groups to discuss about these contents. And last, I also conduct like learning experience surveys regularly to gather feedback and improve the curriculum, which is something that I really value. So the result is that we review the enrollment rate and also the curriculum evaluations after launching the curriculum for the first quarter. So the enrollment rate was 2 times higher than the other curricula, and which is highest rate. And the learning experience evaluations also show that learners were impressed by the innovative design and also the content of the curriculum. And that curriculum becomes one of the most successful projects in our organization and also lead to the innovation of other curricula.
Wow.
Beautiful. Really demonstrates layers of your clear expertise and rigor around not only problem solving, but helping to advocate for the learner. So I really appreciate that. If I could push you a little bit, Min,
Yeah.
you'd invite me to do that.
Yes.
I would love to know, like, pride, like that word, like, why did that experience come up for you? Like, what moment of that would you say, I'm proud of myself? Like, that was damn good of me.
That's a great question, because this is such a teamwork. There are moments I feel like, oh, we're really getting this better and better. So I think these moments comes when I and other team members talk to our stakeholders. Actually, we have had these meetings very regularly, like bi-weekly report, because our stakeholder want us to make this product very good, and they want us to be proud of this product. And so having the conversations with them on a weekly basis and really showing the difficulties and the good things that we have done, I think those are the moments really shows me that this is the proudest accomplishment. So I think it's a combination of teamwork and also an ongoing conversation and building up that this is a very rich experience for me.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, good. Yeah, that was like, you're doing a really good job framing these responses, it seems like bringing us into the context, like, here's what's going on. And some people have been asking about that. So definitely can't forget to hear about your approach to answering these questions. I don't know if we want to do that now or talk about it at the end. Maybe we save it. But Alyssa, so that's your favorite question.
Yeah.
Tell us more about why and why you asked that follow-up about the moments. What are the moments where you feel proud?
I think this is like a real opportunity for empathy for me. This is a moment for me to really put myself in that, see if I've had that experience they're describing before and connect back to how I felt. and say, "Ooh, yeah, I remember what that felt like. That felt good." And like when we're the superhero for the learner, or when we're protecting that, knowledge in that from that SME and that curriculum piece that's close to near retirement, like reminds me of old video games in the arcade that are not played anymore and they're on their way to being decommissioned, right? It's like, ooh, we saved something there. And so I think for me, it's really about thinking about back to, again, like what stands out for Min. How comfortable is she bragging about herself? How comfortable is she talking about her wins and owning that? And what is it that really motivates her? What in there really made her feel proud of herself? Is it the people she helped? Is it the learner that she saved? Is it the curriculum and the knowledge she preserved? Like what motivates Min? I'm really looking for that in there. And who is she as a person, again, too? Like thinking about her personality and drivers, and how could I then motivate or coach her in the future by aligning the right types of work with her drivers. So for me, it's really thinking about my pipeline of work and projects that I have from a tactical perspective, and how could I leverage Min there? But also I want to know her. I want to know what makes her tick. I want to try to understand from a psychology perspective how I can light the right fire and attach her value and how she gets value and meaning out of work to some of the work that maybe isn't as inspiring sometimes, but how could I make it inspiring, or how could I tweak it for her to where it will be something she's asking for more of, so it benefits the work and the business, but also takes care of Min and what makes her feel good about herself and her work.
Wow. Yeah, you pack a lot into these questions. Like it's like, oh, okay, it's just a question, but it's not just a question. Like you're learning more about what makes someone tick, like how, yeah, you're thinking about how they fit into the team, how they fit into the projects you're working on. Yeah, really cool hearing your perspective on like what you're looking for when you ask these questions, because it's deeper than I would expect just hearing the question. So really seems like definitely a skill, interviewing on its own.
I think it comes from being an English professor and teaching literature, right? Because it's not just about reading the novel Frankenstein. It's about the history and the politics of the time and the gender strife and the Mary Shelley writing under a student. It's like there's all of these layers and complexity in a novel.
Yeah.
And I see Min as a novel, and I'm trying to understand what are all the layers that go into that, from being, a female coming into the tech space. Love that. How do I play into that and like bring that in, because I love that from just a sort of theme perspective. How do I embrace her background in academia with curiosity and solving problems and failure? Like I want to see the whole person, of course, through the lens of this job, but more largely than that, like what makes you, what makes you tick.
Yeah. Great analogies. Yeah, people are noticing your great analogies. And I know you like them and you use them really well, but yeah, great response. This is very insightful. So, and this is good. And many people are curious to hear about your approach to answering these, but would you rather talk a bit about that after we're through the questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. So I think we probably have just one or two more questions, right?
I think honestly though, my other one was, tell me about a time, a project or program got off track, and Min sort of answered that in her response on when she failed with her project, that she misquoted up front and then got proper estimates and learned to overestimate at the end. So I think she hit that one. And otherwise she hit all of my main ones. What I would probably do at this point, and I'm really curious if a few people in this chat, I'm noticing their names and their vernacular. I'm wondering if they've interviewed with me before, but I would usually ask about like hobbies or interests outside of work to kind of round it out. So I'm happy to ask that if you're comfortable with that, Min.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. I'd love to talk about my hobbies. I love doing things with people, like spending time in nature, and also teach kids like languages and math, and also, it might be a little bit nerdy, I love to learn how machine translation works because my background and interest in language. And also I love creating plant-based recipes, and I'm still thinking about, should I share with people my passion for that? I know I got a lot of like attentions on that on my other social media platform. And I think that's
I love it.
these are my
I love it. I'm a huge foodie, and plant-based is definitely undeveloped part of my repertoire. So I would love to learn more about that. And if you're willing to share anything, that would be awesome. We actually have another person on my team who is a vegan, and she's a new vegan due to health reasons. And so maybe you two could become friends and share some of your common interests. That would be interesting.
Absolutely.
Nice. Got some vegans in the chat as well. Vegan here too. But Min, I don't know. I didn't hear you mention photography, and we were looking at your site yesterday, and you had some really impressive photographs. Really cool. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. Thank you.
But good
Oh,
stuff.
stand-up
Okay.
comedy too. I'm sorry. Stand-up.
Stand-up comedy. Wow, you do it all.
Yeah.
We need to schedule a stand-up session with Min.
I am obsessed with stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
That is the key to my heart.
Good.
And whiskey, but that's not as appropriate during the day.
Okay, so how did we do? So that last question was about a time where a project got off track, but we helped bring it back on track. And so with that one, I'm guessing you're looking at like how do people respond when things are going wrong? How do we respond under pressure?
Yeah, the biggest thing is not suffering in silence, learning to ask for help, period. I think there is a huge stigma about coming into corporate learning, and our sort of instinct as adults, we don't like to be judged by our peers, and that is something that happens as adults latently. And so we don't like to ask for help. We don't like to seem like we don't know what we don't know. But the reality is you can learn something from everybody you meet, right? And in a team setting where people depend on you, it is, anyone who played sports knows, right? It is so much worse to suffer in silence and not think about the collective than it is just to raise your hand and ask for help early. And so something on my team, this is more of like a manager direct report behavior I look for, is someone who knows when to escalate, and that gets that timing right? It's early enough to still fix, but it's not too late where it's like ego, right? And for me, nice. I tried relentlessly to be someone who's authentic and not driven by ego. And I want folks to feel that from me, hold me accountable to that, and then also allow me to hold them accountable to that. And I think asking for help is a huge skill and behavior that demonstrates humility and also that team spirit.
Nice. Okay, good. Great perspective. I'm sure that resonates with a lot of us here. That's good. And Min, before we dive into the questions from everyone who joined us today, I think one on a lot of people's minds is, how are you formulating these responses? What is your approach?
Yeah, great questions. So first of all, I would say that read the job description. Really read it, and also most importantly, knowing the company, like the products, the solutions, and the values. I think these things are very important. How much you know, and really reflect in these like 30 minutes how much you care about. I think like really care about the positions that you are applying for. Those are necessary preparation for writing out the answer to those questions. And I would say that keeping those big picture in mind would help us to form our answer. And one of the methods that I use is STAR method, like situation, task, actions, and result. And really use concise sentences to, like, for example, situation, maybe 1 or 2 sentences, and task, 1 or 2 sentences, and actions, maybe 3 to 4 points, and just elaborate those. And then talk about the result, like 1 or 2 sentences. I think this is the method that I use. This is how I prepare. And the third thing that I would like to do is that I tend to talk a lot because coming from academia, like professors, we talk a lot in class, right? But yeah, so I purposefully just like time myself how much time I need to answer their questions, and even how much time, how many words I can say in 1 minute. I know it's I did that all the time, like 130. So I would I would calculate how many words that I say, and I think this quality control seems to be a little bit excessive, but I think it's really helping me to have wiggle room to just adjust, and that's my approach. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, man. Yeah, the STAR method. When you're answering, we might not pick up on it, but I see that as like such a popular, good way to respond to these interview questions, to really paint the full picture and kind of tie everything together. So nice work executing that.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, of course.
I think it's star with sparkle. That's how I would describe it. Like still have sparkle, right? Like still, whether it's like your nerdiness or your language or something, like still have something that's you, that's gonna make me remember you.
Yeah.
Not something that just so sanitized and it's such a great answer, but I don't remember you.
Nice.
So I'd say star with sparkle.
Star with sparkle. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We won't forget that one. That's good. Okay. All right, let's see what other questions we have here. We have about 15 to 20 minutes or so. I see this question from Joanna up here at the top, and it caught my eye when she asked it. How do you balance being authentic with maintaining the norms or politics of an interview process?
Is that for me or Min?
I think it was when you were talking about authenticity and how this is like a conversation. And maybe this is a good time to mention. Yeah, I mean, maybe not every interviewer out there shares your same perspective about what an interview is. And we probably all wish that they did. But yeah, I mean, if someone really does resonate with that authenticity, they want to go into it as if it's a conversation. Is there anything we should be concerned about or wary of?
Yeah, I think this goes back to also like, where are you in your professional space right now, in terms of if you need a job and you need work, you may be more cautious and you may be more reserved and less inclined to take risks. I totally get that. For me, Alyssa Clark, when I've balanced being authentic and the norms, expectations of an interview process, I think for me, and again, this is purely based on my own experience, but I have a hard time with rules as it is, and a hard time with norms. And I think for me, being truer to myself is more important to me than being liked. And I think by being connected to who I am fearlessly and relentlessly, it gets me in trouble. It's definitely a lonely place sometimes. But I feel really good about myself and how I carry myself. And so I think for me, finding that balance, Joanna, is really about listening to yourself, staying true to yourself, being humble enough to realize when you've deviated, you made a compromise, you look back on that answer, maybe you weren't as honest as you normally would be. Maybe you weren't the same girl that you would be from that one boss that you had that great relationship with. Maybe you were a sanitized version of yourself, and that's okay. It's a learning experience. But I would just say, like, using each opportunity, each conversation to refine yourself, like a piece of sand with a wave crashing over it, it gets sharper every time. And eventually, you'll become that diamond, right? Where you're just sparkly and it's just happening organically and it's less conscious, but it's practice. Just like we teach our learners, it's for us too, finding your story, finding your narrative, finding your sparkle. So you focus less on that conscious balancing act and more on just being truly in your power and in your moment and listening to who you are. And I know that sounds a bit highfalutin, but I really believe that that's the key.
Nice. So yeah, not compromising on who you are. And it's kind of a risk, it sounds like, almost, if you're taking that approach. It's like, maybe it's riskier because you don't get this specific job if you really wanted it or something, but maybe less risky in the long run, because like you were mentioning earlier, if you wind up in a role or with a company that's like not right for you, it seems like you're going to be paying for that like maybe a few months down the road.
Totally. And I think too, it's like, that doesn't mean EQ and the other person's feelings, you get to like bulldoze through that, right? It's definitely about still having EQ, reading the room. Like Min was very respectful, and I felt in her being so well researched and so well read on who I'm representing, the brand and the company I'm representing. She was showing me that respect and that humility, but I also, that earned credibility with me, that if she had been even more sparkly and more, I would have had more space for that, because she clearly demonstrates that balance of respect for my time and the opportunity I'm representing, but also confident to allow her real self to shine through. And so I think it's that still balancing act for sure of making sure you don't compromise the research. You don't get just bulldoze in. It's the, Alyssa Clark show, but it's still that dance of EQ that matched with, a really self-confident, self-actualized person.
Nice. Good. Okay. All right, Joanna, hopefully that helps with that question. We have a few questions here too from Nicole, Brandon, about Addie and Sam. I think when you asked the question, and I think you made a comment, like if we're talking about Addie and Sam, maybe, we're like a decade in the past. And I guess people are like, okay, well, if that's like indicating we're like in the past, like what should we be talking about? I think you kind of talked about some more of the like emerging tech and things like that, but from a theory perspective, I don't know if are there any like theories people can talk about, or models, or just instructional design approaches that would seem a bit more modern?
Yeah, and this is definitely, I want to remind everyone of my bias of where I sit, is that I'm in literally my charter is dedicated to innovation in ServiceNow, in an already innovative tech company that's releasing on an agile monthly product update schedule. So just think about, I bet you that's Eric Eastland in the chat, because I just interviewed him and he's already talking about design thinking. So what I would encourage everyone to think about is design thinking. That is really where, especially if you're coming into a tech product-based company, we build our products through that model with a capital A in Agile. And so I think thinking about how you build content in that speed and pace is more applicable in a tech setting than perhaps in other settings where you don't have that, release frequency that we do, and the speed that you have to. I mean, sometimes we have to get content out in 2 days. I'm not kidding. And I know that happens in other spaces too, but sometimes an Addie or Sam more traditional process scares a stakeholder or scares an internal person because they hear time. They hear days, they hear weeks. That's unfortunately the perception that exists when you use that vernacular. So I think it's about just being very thoughtful about what context you're in. Industry, as an example, product development, like Min did a research and knew how frequently and feverishly we build products. So we're in a space where our pace has to match. And so I'd say design thinking is definitely something, if you're not familiar, start getting familiar. I do believe it's the way that learning is evolving, especially more in that LXP space. And I really, really look for that as well. Someone who's interested in UX, UI design, web development, if you have those sort of organic curiosities, that's where I believe, again, my bias, where the industry is sort of evolving to.
Nice. Great perspective. That's some good insight, because we see Addie everywhere, but cool to see about some of the maybe biases that people in these really fast-paced tech environments may have against some of this. So
totally.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I see some people are hopping out. There's still a couple of hundred of us here, but I did want to just extend the offer to connect with Alyssa and Min on LinkedIn. They're both okay with that. And Min survived the interview, thrived on the interview. So maybe some applause emojis in the chat.
Well done,
So good
Min.
job, Min. I know we immediately just went into the Q&A, but really good job volunteering and answering these questions. So I'm going to share a call to action to connect with Min on LinkedIn while we maybe take a look at the next question. And then I'll share a direct link to Alyssa's profile as well. All right. So let's see. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Oh, Karen asked a question. Min, do you have questions that you like to ask your interviewer?
Yeah, fantastic questions. I would really know more about how does learning and development sit in ServiceNow. I know there's a lot of platforms that you're trying to build and workflows, and even I think one of the value that you have is behind every great experience, there's a great workflow. So I wanted to know more about how does learning and development sit in your business.
Yeah, for sure. So like most large tech companies, we still have a bit of silos within ServiceNow, meaning there's learning embedded in different pockets and places. So we have an organization dedicated to our internal enablement. So folks who are salespeople go out and sell and do things for the customer. There's a training org for that. And then the training org I sit in is our training and certification organization, which trains our customers who buy our technology and our partners who either help co-sell our technology or help us implement our technology. And so what I'm really excited about is our organization is actually a profit center within ServiceNow. We generate $50 million a year for the business as an actual contributing profit center to the organization. And next year we're budgeting to do 61 million for the company. And so with that sort of wonderful positioning that our VP Kat Lang and my new leader Andy Ho have sort of positioned this group to be not only an actual competitive differentiator for larger ServiceNow, but we're actually able to invest in innovation, which is what I'm doing now. So our team is called Taco X, Training and Certification Org, with an X for innovation. And we actually are the sort of retained think tank now to build what's coming in 5 years. That is literally what our VP has said to me is, Alyssa, I want the wow. I want what's coming in 5 years. I don't want tomorrow, I want 5 years. So for us, we are becoming what's going to be our future solutions that will hopefully grow us to 100 million, 150 million. Wow. So we're really positioned to be a investment for the company financially, as well as just drinking our own Kool-Aid and practicing innovation in a learning setting to practice what we preach, which we all think is super important. So that's a bit of how we're positioned.
Wow, that is exciting. And this is the role that people would be applying, like people would be applying to join this team with the link that we shared earlier.
That is the team. That is the opening.
Sounds like quite an exciting team to join. So get those applications in, people. Exciting stuff. Yeah. Okay, cool. But this is good. Should we talk a little bit more? Like, are there specific questions that stand out to you as good questions, Alyssa?
Yeah, I love when people ask about me. Like they want to date me real quick and know what I'm about. I think that's important. I think you should want to know. You can, sometimes they frame it a little bit more neutrally and like, oh, what's your style or what's your management philosophy, right? And so I think that's really important. Like date your new manager. That's who you're going to be accountable to. That's who you have to have rapport with, build trust with. Like, make sure that you at least get a sense of who they are. And then I think another one that's important to me is I like folks who ask me about the current team. Current team. So what are the opportunities you see on your current team? What does your roadmap look like? What is the current priorities? What are the 60-day wins? What's the 6-year wins? Like really pick my brain on vision, where we're going, because I believe that people will join for great vision and then they'll stay for my management. So I really need to make sure they buy into where we're going so I can attract them and then hope that they date me a little bit to get to know me so then I can keep them with my management. So I think those sort of are really important for the interviewer to feel empowered, interviewee to feel empowered to get out of the interviewer.
Nice. Okay, great questions. I think people are going to start asking those a lot more. So be prepared to answer them.
For sure.
But yeah, those are good. I mean, it makes sense. Yeah. Show interest in the person interviewing you and show interest in the team that they lead and probably helped build. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's good.
Totally.
Also for people, everyone who's still here, I did just share the link to connect with Alyssa on LinkedIn. So that's a direct link as well. And let's get to one more question here to wrap things up. Or did we get to all of them? Oh. How can we judge an interviewee's instructional design skills, especially if they don't necessarily call out design thinking as their process?
And I'm just realizing that I forgot to do something, which I told Min I was going to do, and I always do. I ask for either a portfolio piece of yours to look at, if you're comfortable, website, even photography I've looked at, drone videos, like just some of your portfolio, or the question I asked earlier about what's the best learning experience that you've encountered. I asked someone to share that either in a written setting with sort of a write-up of why, what stuck out to you, and sort of really, again, demonstrating the thought and the mechanics behind how it was built and what's effective about it. That A or B activity is how I close. If it's, I'm the last person in the screening process, that's the cumulative activity. Or it's something that I'll proctor sort of as a standalone to close the whole interview process. But I apologize, Min. I forgot to then plug your wonderful portfolio that you've been working on. So
Yeah, no worries there. That's good. So we can tie things back to the portfolio. So yeah, Min has been working on a portfolio in the boot camp here, and we've been seeing it come together step by step. So ton of progress in the last couple of weeks. I don't know, are you ready to share it yet? Or I think you said you're going to share it with everyone on Monday, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so really nice portfolio site, really strong flagship project on there. So people should watch their LinkedIn feeds on Monday, I guess, to see it go live and explore it for themselves. All right, so a little teaser for Monday. And I think we'll probably end it on that note. Okay, so I'll share the link to the job application or to the job posting one more time. We spent this time with Alyssa. We know what Alyssa and her team is about. So if it sounds like a good fit and you're looking for a role, it's time to apply. All right.
Min,
thank you again,
so
Alyssa.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Min.
you both. Thank you. It was such a fun experience. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for such a lively chat. It was such a great part of this experience. So thank you everyone, and I will see you at the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.